Hello, developers. Welcome back to another show and tell. Today we have Cameron and Matt from One Place Solution. We are excited to hear about their solution. Hi, Cameron. Hi, Matt. Welcome.
Hi,
Ayca.
So before we jump into your solution and understand how you built the solution, how can developers learn more about how to build the similar solutions, can we learn a little bit about yourselves?
Sure. I'll take that one first. My name is Cameron Dwyer. I am the Chief Technology Officer here at One Place Solutions. In that role, I look after our product development and also oversee our operations. At a personal level, I just love building things. I have done since the beginning of time for me anyway. Love building things digitally and also love getting out in my sheds. Love power tools, love building things out of wood. The path that took me here is that I got involved with computers when I was really young. I just like playing around with them, making little games and things. But outside of school, I went through university and did a computer science degree. And then I came straight out of university into a consulting role. Spent the first 10 years or so of my career doing consulting, going into companies, which I really enjoyed, understanding what people actually did in their work life, going into these different companies, understanding the business process and just assisting people with that from a requirements analysis through to the design, the development, and the implementation. And it was actually during my time at One Place Solutions that I changed my career from being a consultant and doing project after project to really focusing on building product and year after year building on top of that product. And I really, really enjoy it, and it's been a great ride.
Awesome. How about you, Matt?
Yeah, thanks, Cam. My name is Mathieu Rebuffet, and I'm a senior software engineer at One Place Solutions. In my current position, I'm in charge of designing, implementing, and testing new features for our application suite. I also ensure that we maintain a high level of code quality within the development team. So a bit about my background. Sorry about that. I was born in France and I studied there until my early 20s. I started early into engineering and a bit of computer science. And then I moved to Scotland to complete my degree, which I obtained there. I then went back to Paris and worked as a consultant for 6 years before deciding to travel to Australia for 1 year. And that was 10 years ago. And I liked it so much that I ended up relocating here permanently. A bit over 5 years ago, I switched from the world of consulting to a product-focused company when joining One Place Solutions. And I love being able to see how we can make our product evolve thanks to the latest Microsoft technology and also valuable customer feedback. Each release helps us improve our product features and the security around it. And I also enjoy working with a talented team and being able to have an influence on the long-term goals of our company. When I'm not busy writing software, I like to cook, bake, or just generally share a good meal with friends. And I also like cycling and going away camping in one of the many beautiful national parks that we have around Sydney. And yeah.
Awesome. So let's hear about your solution a little bit. Would you like to share the story behind it and how you started building the solution and what it does mainly?
Sure. Love to. Well, first of all, I guess our company, we've spoken a little bit about it just in talking about ourselves at a personal level, but we are a Microsoft Gold partner. We are an ISV, so all we do is develop products. And those products are really about bringing the solutions that our customers build on Microsoft 365 closer to where their end users are. So it's really about driving and getting the engagement of your business solutions. And we do that by bringing the data and the features of Microsoft 365 down into core applications that users work in every day. So this is integrations into Outlook, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Adobe Acrobat, the Windows desktop itself. The product suite that we have is multiple products, and we're really helping with business challenges, well, firstly around engagement of the Microsoft platform, Microsoft 365 platform, but also the business challenges of email management, document management, records management, and compliance. I'm just trying to set the scene here as to what we'll be talking about today because we are a product company. We have a suite of products. The product we're going to talk about today is One Place Mail. And One Place Mail, a core objective of One Place Mail is to ensure that business critical information doesn't get locked away in personal inboxes. And so with One Place Mail, we're really promoting centralized storage of email and attachments in SharePoint or in Teams, where you can really unlock the business value and a complete part of a larger solution inside of your organization. Even within the One Place Mail product brand, we have two different variants of the product. The One Place Mail desktop has been in the market for over 15 years, and that is an integration inside of Outlook, and it uses a Outlook add-in extensibility model that was known as VSTO or COM add-ins. Now, while that's mature and it's been in the market for a long time, over the last 5 years, we've also been developing another variant of One Place Mail, which we call the One Place Mail app, and that's based on the more modern approach to building add-ins, which is web-based. And that gives us the reach not just on Windows-based PCs, which is where our One Place Mail desktop product runs, but the modern web-based add-in model allows us to get reach across Mac, across onto Android phones and iPhones and iPads and the web browser itself. So that, as I say, we've had a product in the market there for the last 5 years, and as that model matures, we're able to light up more and more features and functionality that we have in our rich desktop application. But as I say, both of those we take forward. Our One Place Mail desktop is still a premium product. We're releasing new features into that all of the time, and they're just two different development models that we have going at the same time. For the remainder of this interview, we're really going to be focusing on that One Place Mail app under the modern web add-in model. And with that, I'll hand back over to Matt. He'll tell us a little bit about the features that are inside of that One Place Mail app and what we're going to see today.
Thanks, Cameron. So yes, in the One Place Mail app add-in, which is a web-based add-in, we really enable our customers to save email and attachments and move them from Outlook to OneDrive, SharePoint, or their Teams environment. By doing so, we also automatically capture the email attributes to SharePoint, promote them to SharePoint columns. This is done using a custom content type that we have designed, and also we allow completion of all the custom SharePoint metadata without leaving the context of your Outlook environment. Another feature that we have added was to move a conversation from an Outlook email and start something, a new conversation in the Teams chat or a team channel. And also the last main feature that we have in the One Place Mail app is to, when you compose a new email, browse your Microsoft 365 content and files and insert them as attachment or links to the files into a new email message. And now I will show you how that works in a demo. You can now see my screen. All right, so when working on a project, we often need to share correspondence to the wider team for collaboration, transparency, or records management. And using One Place Mail, I can select an email and browse my Office 365 environment and find a location where I would like to save him. So I've got a SharePoint node, the Teams node, a OneDrive node. Today I'm going to save to a pin location, which I pinned for faster access. And here I've got a One Place Mail email content type. And that content type will allow me to promote all the metadata straight away to the SharePoint environment. Now I can check the result of that save operation, and I can see that my email now appears, and I've captured the subject, the sender, and the recipients, for example. Another use case that we have is sometimes we want to save. So I want to save the attachments to the project document library to make them accessible for my colleague. And I will use Microsoft Teams then to start a conversation with a member of this project. So I pick that location for fast access. I've got a content type, project content type, and I'm just filling the metadata here. So I've got a project leader, a budget for the project, and a due date. And now I'm going to move over to the notify team, select a team, select a channel, type a message for the members of my team. And then I'd mentioned my colleague Tom was going to work with me. And that will trigger the save and trigger a new message in Teams. By capturing the metadata during the save process, we can also trigger workflows like an approval process for that project, for example. So right now it's in pending, but later it'll be approved. And then I can see here my colleague Tom was at mention, and the documents are saved in the correct library. I wanted to save them, and now everybody will start working on that document from the save location. So it's a shared location. Any future change would be then carried on.
It's a quite useful solution. I have a question. So
Yes.
I feel like when you're demoing the solution, there are lots of Microsoft 365 data you integrated in the One Place mail. How did you build exactly this solution? I feel like there are a lot of graph integrations as well as SharePoint. So can you tell us more how exactly you built the solution? Maybe a little bit of solution architecture we can discuss.
Yeah, sure. Cameron's got some great slides coming next. We're going to show you the whole flow. But yes, you're right. There's a lot of graph integration, SharePoint, REST, SharePoint, PNP. There's a lot of integration with all that.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll take you through basically conceptually a little peek behind the curtains as to what Matt just demoed. Let's have a look at what is actually going on. So if I draw your attention to the center of this slide where we've got an image of Outlook and we've got that One Place Mail task pane running there. Under this new web add-in model, the modern Microsoft web add-in model, you can think of that task pane as just being a web browser window. It's a web browser control hosted inside of Outlook. So really, we're just writing or developing web applications, and you can think of that as a HTML page. So the first thing that happened in that demo was we needed to get the source code, the files, the HTML file for that web application and render it. So we're hosting that somewhere. We'll talk about that somewhere in a little bit, but those static files get loaded in. So that's your HTML, your CSS, your JavaScript is getting loaded in. At that point, we're actually got enough to execute something inside of Outlook and the user can see something. There's a few more things that goes on behind the scenes. One of those things is to identify the user from an authentication and authorization perspective. And that will then give us the ability to call in using some of those APIs that you just mentioned, Ayca. Before we can call the Microsoft Graph, we have to identify the user, get user tokens. So we rely on a back-end identity service to be able to help us with that. And the other thing we do, being a commercial offering, is we need to make sure that the user has a valid subscription, that they've got a user license, and know which features to light up within our product. And we rely on a back-end licensing service to do that as well. So that all happens in the background. And once we pass those things, it's then our web add-in is actually communicating directly with the client's Microsoft 365 environment. And that was that process Matt took us through of being able to browse or search through SharePoint, through OneDrive and through Teams. And we do use a multitude of different APIs to do all of that. But that's directly interrogating in real time your Microsoft 365 environment, however you've configured it. And we're doing things like you saw the selector for the content type. So once we've chosen a location where we'd like to save it to, it's dynamically looking at the content types that are available inside of that library. And then for each of the content types, it's looking at all the different SharePoint metadata columns that are being configured and the valid values for them, and allowing the user to interact and fill out the metadata just as though they'd gone to SharePoint, but they haven't had to leave Outlook. And that's the power of automating this particular use case, is the user's able to do everything they need to do, but they can do it where the data is without leaving that product. So once Matt had selected that location and entered the metadata, it was then time to actually move that mail message and transfer it, or the attachments off, and transfer those up to SharePoint. Now, what we don't do is we don't do that transfer directly in the web application running inside of Outlook. And if you think about this in the context of running on a mobile device, we wouldn't want to have to drag large email attachments and a large email down to the mobile device just to push it back up to SharePoint. If that was done over cellular data, it could take a while, and it could also get costly. And also, the way that the add-in model works is that as you change between different email messages, that web browser control gets destroyed and gets created again. So if we were to do all this in the foreground, we'd have to force the user to keep that mail message open and not move off it while we completed the transfer. So what we do is we push that off to a background service. And so that's sort of a request goes to our backend service, and then under delegated permissions, so operating on behalf of the user, the One Place mail service will reach back inside of their mailbox. It will grab the email or the attachments, stream it down into the service, and then stream it back up to SharePoint. The files are created in SharePoint. The metadata is applied. And then the last thing we do is that service will reach back into the email message, and it sets a category on it to let the user know that the transfer has been completed. So that gives them a nice little coloured category, pops up on their inbox, and they can see that the backend service has done its job. So that's conceptually what was going on. But if you want to go deeper and talk about some of those APIs and technologies, this is sort of from a developer's lens. So what we're looking at, the first thing, that add-in that we saw, it's not just a single HTML page. It is in fact an Angular single page application is what we're running. Now the add-in model doesn't dictate what you use. It could be as simple as a HTML page. You could use no framework at all, but for us we went with an Angular framework. And so that is just a series of static files that need to be loaded in. We are hosting that in Azure Blob Storage. And in front of our Azure Blob Storage, we have an Azure CDN. Now, the reason we use an Azure CDN is that it makes your application or those static files highly available. Azure CDN has a whole heap of what they call point of presence servers around the world. And what that means is that no matter where you are trying to access those files from, you are going to have a geographically close server providing those files, which means you're going to get great performance on downloading those files. Directly from the Angular application, that's where we're communicating to the Microsoft 365 tenancy. So a lot of that interaction, searching SharePoint, navigating SharePoint, OneDrive, Teams, that's all happening directly from the Angular application using Microsoft Graph APIs. We're using the JavaScript SDK. I think we're making some raw calls there as well. We're using a mix of different technologies, but hitting Microsoft Graph quite heavily. And we're also rely on SharePoint PnP and SharePoint REST API as well. Okay, so that's what we did from the Angular application. Other things I wanted to mention were those services that we talked about, our identity service, our licensing service, and that One Place mail service that actually does the transfer. We're relying on Azure. All of this is built in Azure. We love the Azure serverless platform because what it means is we're able to provide a lot of these services without having to give too much thought to the hardware. It's not our hardware, it's Microsoft's. Microsoft looks after the operating systems and sort of the stack of technology on it, which allows us to concentrate on just building the business value of what we're trying to provide inside of our applications. So from an operations perspective, that's great. We don't have to worry about patching servers. We kind of have standardized for each of our services by using Azure Function Apps for our compute. It scales well, and we also use, usually those Azure functions are triggered from our Angular SPA. We'll be making requests to our backend service, and that's the trigger point for the Azure function to kick in. From a storage perspective, we use a mix of Azure SQL and Azure Cosmos. Again, it's platform as a service. We don't have to worry about the hardware, or like for SQL, we don't have to install an SQL server and keep it patched. Microsoft's just providing it as a service for us. So that's a little bit of the technology we use. We also use Azure Storage, Azure Queue Storage, and Azure Service Bus for messaging. So that allows us to break down our services into smaller components, and we use the messaging queues between those different components to communicate and decouple it. Another piece of Azure that we use, which is quite cool, is the Azure Front Door, because each of these Azure Function Apps and these services, when you first create it, they'll all have their own URLs. They're a different domain. But what you find is that as you increase these number of services and you have all of these different domains, our customers will often have to configure their firewalls to allow specific domains for that front-end Angular application to call out to these different domains. And what Azure Front Door allows you to do is it allows you to provide one uniform URL, and all of your other service URLs can hide behind that. So it allows you to unify it on one URL. So that means to our customers, they only have to open up one URL through their firewall, and then we could actually increase the number of services behind our Azure Front Door, and that's kind of transparent to our front-end application and thus to our customers. So Azure Front Door allows us to do that. The other benefit of it is being able to refactor our services. So if one of these services was to get more and more functionality and start really providing more than one purpose, which our One Place Mail service has a little bit of that today. It allows us to split it out so that we could split that One Place Mail service into 2 different features or 3 different features, but all of that complexity and the routing of which service it should go to, all of that is encapsulated behind the Azure front door. We also use it for our deployments, the Azure front door. So each of these services, we actually have multiple instances of these services, and they can run in different data centers for different geographies and to handle load, but it also helps us with our deployments. When we change code, which we do multiple times a week, a whole new instance of this service is spun up as code. And that gets added into Azure front door. We can start shifting traffic across to it. And then we can, once we've proven that it's stable and it's working and we've got no problems, we can start decommissioning those older instances, and we have 0 downtime. So Azure front door serves all of those purposes for us, and it's a great resource to be able to pull on inside of Azure. Probably the last thing I've got on this slide is application insights. I just wanted to touch on that quickly. It's great for doing telemetry of your different pieces that are inside of Azure and your logging. But one thing that has worked well for us is that we use a different application insights instance for each one of our services, which is great for monitoring the health of the individual services. And sometimes you've got teams that just look after specific services. So it's great for that isolated view to determine how well that service is going. But part of application insights is the ability to do distributed tracing and visually correlate this back together. So if you think about a thread of execution, when Matt started up and did that demo and that Angular app loaded in, we used the identity service, we used the licensing service, and we used the One Place Mail service. So one usage of our application could actually flow through all of these different services, and the ability to tie all that together to be one user session, that whole thread, and see it visually is something that you can do quite easily using application insights and Azure Portal. We still have a few more things to talk about if you've got time, Ayca. Matt still has another demo up his sleeve, I believe.
Yes, I wanted to show you another feature that we have, which is the insert as PDF, which we developed by talking to the Graph team directly and leverage one of the great features of the Graph API. So let me show you how that works. Okay, so in this demo, I will show you how we can insert some Office file as PDF attachment inside an email. So when sharing file externally, we usually prefer to send them out in a read-only format. There's a couple of reasons for that. We could share with other area of the business or customers, and we don't want an original Word document to be modified. So here I'm going to open our One Place Mail app, find a Word document I'd like to share, and as an option, I can insert it as PDF. This is leveraging an excellent feature of the Graph API that allows us to request a range of Office file formats into another format, which is PDF in this case. And here I can see I've selected the insert as PDF, and my file has been added as a PDF. So pretty cool. Let's have a look at, oh, it's actually working under the cover. So this is my environment, and or the customer environment in this case. And here we're going to start the add-in. So run our One Place Mail add-in inside Outlook. And then the first thing we need to do is verify who am I and if I'm allowed to perform this operation. And after that, we're going to browse our Office or Microsoft 365 tenant environment and try to gather some key properties about this file I want to convert as PDF or attach to my email. And some key information that we need is which site and at least a library it is stored in, and also what is the actual ID of this file within that location. Depending on where the file is located, we would call either the SharePoint API or the Graph API or both. Once we gather this information, we can then call our One Place Mail service, and we're going to send the selected properties to the One Place Mail service, which will then perform the conversion for us. And the reason we do that in the service and not directly in the front is the Graph API returns a 302 redirect with the location of the converted file, which we then need to download or do anything with it. If we are doing that directly in the browser may navigate away, or it's just won't be working well. So we do that in the background. convert the file and return that location URL. So we request the content as PDF directly to the graph, which would then respond with the download URL, which we can then feed back to our add-in, or an error message if anything happened. And then once we gather that download URL, we can then use the Office.js APIs to then attach the PDF file directly into the email. And that was the feature.
Perfect. Are these identity service the same service you use in the previous solution as well?
Yes, correct. Yes.
Okay, so it is again reused in other features as well.
Yes, 100%. It's just different function apps, but the core service is very similar. Yeah, we try to reuse and share as much as we can. Easier to maintain. It's a lot easier to build upon after that.
Yeah, it's a really useful piece of the Graph API, that being able to convert a whole file types into a PDF. If that's something that someone was looking to do themselves, there's whole products out there and has been in the marketplace for a while to do those sort of file type conversions for you. It's difficult code to write yourselves, but it's something you sort of get for free with Microsoft Graph API. Most times when you think of the Graph API, you think of very transactional things like I just want the ID of something or a property of something, but with one call, the Graph can do a whole conversion of one file type to another. So that's quite powerful from a developer's point of view.
Yes, exactly. When we use Graph API, first thing comes to our mind is the profile information of the person or the emails and so on. But Graph actually has many different features and hundreds of different data sets. So I'm glad that we also show different side of the Graph where it can convert the file and help you use the file in a different version. So this is pretty cool, and your solutions touch a lot in the Azure side as well, and you use a lot of serverless as well as Azure Front Door and so many other data storage solutions like Service Bus or Q. So where can developers learn more about your solution?
Okay, well, the company website is the best place to go, which is oneplacesolutions.com. That obviously shows all of our products and more information about all of them, and we'll provide that in the article that accompanies this. But we'll also provide a link that goes directly to the One Place Mail web app, which is what we've talked about here today. So users can download that. All of our software has free trials. You can download them immediately off our website, install them, and get up and working straight away. The products that you download from there, I think everyone should be able to get up and working with those on their own. None of them require an admin, like a tenant admin or anything like that, to actually get up and get started with. So that's probably the best place to start. There's lots of little videos and articles and blog posts up on the website, and we'll also provide Matt and my contact details, social details. So if anyone wants to reach out, if they've got questions, then feel free to hit us up.
That's perfect. Sometimes it's easier to build solutions with Graph and the functions when it's a smaller piece, but when it's big as your solution, like One Place Mail or your other solutions, it definitely requires some guidelines like blog posts or some of the videos, maybe some of the architectural guidance. So that would be really nice to have those links. We will definitely add those links in the description box. And that was a great solution. Thanks for showing us all the architectural details as well as the products you use in the Azure Microsoft 365 side. It's definitely one Microsoft Cloud solution for sure. We see a lot of clouds included, not only one single, but some other clouds like M365, Azure. So that's a really good practice. Thanks for joining in this show and tell. And we will definitely share Cameron and Matt's social details as well. If you want to reach out to them, you can definitely ask your questions in the socials too. So thanks everyone for watching this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe our Microsoft 365 YouTube channel. So see you in the next show and tell. Bye.
Thanks, Ayca.
Thanks, Ayca.